Hello, faithful listeners. My name is Clay Thompson, and I'll be your guide once again in the Fiction Room. Today's prompt is brought to us from username Bystander007. During a bank robbery, you're surprised when the criminals seem to recognize you and retreat in fear. Only later do you learn that your high school sweetheart now runs a global crime syndicate and has placed you on a no-harm list. You decide to pay them a visit after all these years. As always, I hope you enjoy listening to these stories as much as I enjoy reading them. But without further ado, let's begin with our first story, written by Star Effer Supreme. Oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God. What is it? Calm down, T. It's him! It's Warren! No, it can't. What? The Warren? Yes, the Warren, you idiot! We're sorry, sir. We didn't know you're in here. The shaking man in the ski mask told me. Honest mistake, sir, the other bank robber yelled from the counter. Have a nice day. I had not understood then, but I did now. It corroborated a lot of events that had been happening in the past few years. Small, subtle things like preferential treatment at a coffee place, or how my friends kept telling me how lucky I was that I would always get the first job offer or apartment I applied for. I had always chalked it up to good fortune. But this event, the robber calling me the Warren, meant that to their group, or at least to someone, I was important. Important enough for bank robbers to run out of the building in fear. And as I stood among those dressed in black, each man and woman walked past me with grieving faces. They told me how much my mother meant to them, and how sorry they were. They each shared a happy moment for me to hold on to think about the better times. Despite the stories, I sat there, watching the gravedigger shovel more and more dirt onto her coffin. Soon there was no one left but the gravedigger. I broke down into tears, sobbing into my palms like a little boy. I wailed and wailed, thinking about all the moments I had with her, and all the moments I wouldn't. I heaved with each cry and let out what I had tried so strongly to hold in, to give the appearance of strength. But I was weak. I was helpless. I let her die. I should have pushed harder. You see, she wasn't dead of old age. She didn't die in a tragic car accident. She died of methemoglobinemia. Aniline seeping into the water pipes from a nearby factory repeatedly poisoned my mother for years. I'm sorry, a voice said calmly behind me. I was startled and released my sticky hands from my face. The gravedigger was gone, the grave still only half full. I tried to recompose myself before turning around to face the voice. But when I turned, I saw her. Ira. The girl I once loved. Once. We had split up right before college in a less than friendly fashion. I don't even remember what the fight was about, but she had struck me. It didn't really hurt physically, and I tried to assure her that I could forgive it, but she was distraught. She said nobody had ever made her feel that way, and left. She stood there, looking like she did the day we split up. I sat there motionless, the scent of freshly dug soil lingering in the air. She turned and walked away, and I didn't follow. After a few days, I wasn't even sure it happened. Maybe it was just a stress-induced imagination. But she stayed in my mind, and with every lucky green traffic light, to fortunate parking space, every random Samaritan paying for my meal, she came into my mind. Was she the reason I was called the Warren? I was bent over my desk, paper scattered across the surface. Like a full-blown conspiracy theorist, I had strings connecting pages and photographs on a corkboard, trying to link all the people that held back the regulations to make the waters safe. I had most of the links, but it was overwhelming me. There were so many people involved, from government officials to safety inspectors. all of them were in on it in some way. In this moment, my mother would have come in with a glass of tea, patting me on the shoulder to tell me that I shouldn't work so hard, that I would work myself into an early grave. But her ghost faded away as I yearned for that pat on the shoulder. I looked up in anger and saw the photos of the men and women stuck on the board who denied me the rest of her life. I screamed. I screamed and screamed only to be interrupted by a knock on my door. Looking through the peephole, I saw Joe's Pizza Palace written on the teenager's hat. "I have a delivery for, Mr. Warren?" the pizza boy yelled from the other side of the door before giving it another knock. I opened the door. "Ah, Warren, right?" he asked, handing me the pizza. "I didn't order a pizza," I mentioned, still taking the pizza in hand because it was a pizza and I wasn't going to say no. "It says right here, Warren, 25 Paper Street, pepperoni and pineapples with extra pineapples," he said, pointing at the receipt. "Now, I won't judge you for the pineapples. Everyone has their dirty little secret. Have a nice day," the boy said with a smile before turning and walking away. Wait, I haven't paid for this yet," I yelled across my front yard. The boy looked back down at the receipt. "No, it says here that you paid all mine already," he yelled back as he reached his car door, the Joe's Pizza Palace car topper blocking his face. He paused and leaned to look at me again past the topper. "Or at least somebody did," he mentioned with an innocent smile before getting in the car and driving away. Pepperoni and pineapples were my favorite. I walked back into my living room and placed the pizza down, opening the box expecting a message written inside. Of course there was none. Why would there be? I took a slice and walked up to the corkboard of faces. I stood there chewing, trying to think of my approach tomorrow. I had planned to go to the zoning official's office and get some answers. I had a rough plan about how I was going to get in front of the man, but it was still rough. Looking back down at the pizza, I tried to shake it off as crazy. But the feeling was there, and any idiot could have seen the connections. But it was crazy. "Tomorrow," I yelled to nobody in the room, "I'm going to the zoning officials board to speak with Harold Weinbrecht about the unintended seeping of aniline into the water supply system." And of course, nobody replied. You'd think that someone that has that much power would use it for more nefarious purposes, but it actually makes me happy to see that this character will likely use his influence to find out why his mom had to be poisoned and why she had to die, and hold the people responsible accountable for their actions. So I would love to see more of this one. And now let's move on to our second story, written by Super Idiot 360. It's amazing how much people change after high school. Chad Burkhart was the star quarterback in high school, the most popular guy in school. Now he works at a gas station with a potbelly and no hair. Dave Spellerman went from bullied nerd to internet billionaire. All that time spent on a computer really paid off for him. And then there's Rosalind Roz Churchill, who went from my childhood friend to my high school flame to leader of the criminal underground. That one was definitely a curveball. All I wanted to do was use the ATM. Then some thugs in ski masks bust in and hold me at gunpoint, threatening to shoot me if they didn't open the register. I thought it was all over until the weirdest dang thing happened. See, one of the guys took my wallet and started pocketing all my cash. But when they saw my driver's license, this tough, beefy criminal starts freaking out. "It's him! It's the guy on the no harm list! We just held Mike Peterson at gunpoint!" One of the other guys grabbed my wallet, looked inside, and just froze. "Oh no," he said. "If Roz finds out, we're dead meat!" So the thugs just drop my wallet on the ground and pull some money out of their pockets. They hand it to me, and one of them tells me, "Please, don't tell Roz. It was a mistake, honestly." Then they ran out of there as fast as they could. And I was left standing there as everyone in the bank looked at me, wondering what in God's name just happened. No way it could be that Roz. Right? Roz was one of those girls you think only exist in movies. The girl that comes into your life to turn it upside down. That wild and rebellious girl who gets you to loosen up and enjoy life. She did that ever since we were kids. And when high school came around, I gathered up the courage to ask her out. We dated for a few years, but when college rolled around, we realized we were heading separate ways in life. So we broke up, very amicably, and eventually just lost touch. It wasn't until I started tracking her down that I realized she had even come back to town. Finding her location was surprisingly easy. I drove into the shadier part of town and started asking around. Whenever I said her name, their faces would get deathly pale. Some just ran away, terrified for their lives. The ones who didn't filled me in. Apparently, Roz was basically the queen of some massive criminal organization with influence all over the world. She's basically the queen of crime. No one even jaywalks without getting her permission. Those who disobeyed her had a habit of disappearing. I couldn't believe it. Roz? Some evil mastermind? She was one of the sweetest people on the planet. No way she was some sort of super mafia boss. As I dug deeper, I learned that she apparently put me on a no-harm list. Though it wasn't much of a list, as I was apparently the only one on it. None of her old friends or even her family made it on the list, which wasn't surprising considering the strained relationship she had with her parents. Roz decreed that anyone who tried to harm me in any way was to be killed. After a little more digging, I finally found what I was looking for: the address of her headquarters. So here I was, standing outside some abandoned-looking warehouse about to meet my criminal ex-girlfriend. All in all, not how I expected to spend my Saturday. I walked up to the entrance and some big bouncer-looking type stopped me. "Sir, I'm gonna have to ask you to leave." "Look, I'm here to see Roz. She's an old friend of mine and..." Without warning, the big guy started walking towards me. He reached for a gun and cocked it. "Sir, no one sees the boss. Now please leave, or I'm gonna make you leave." I put up my hands defensively and shouted, "My name is Mike Peterson. Please, I just want to talk to Roz." The guy's face looked pale, and he backed up immediately. "Mike Peter... My apologies, sir. I didn't know." And then he got on his knees and started begging. Please, don't tell the boss about this. I wouldn't have done it if I had known who you were." Sure?" I said, wanting to move this along as quickly as possible before it got more awkward. The guy got up and walked back to the door, holding it open for me. He was sweating now, his face showing pure terror. "Please, sir, after you." I steeled myself for what would happen next, and walked in. I expected a lot of things, but I didn't expect to see Roz sitting on a golden throne atop a massive pile of money. The guard approached the pile and said, "Ma'am, Mike Peterson has come to speak with you." Roz looked like she was in intense thought about something, but once she heard my name, she turned her attention to me, her face beaming with joy. "Mikey! Oh my gosh, it is you!" She slid down the money pile and gave me a massive hug. "Oh, I missed you so much!" "You look good. Gosh, what's it been, like 10, 12 years? "Yeah, just about." I see you've been busy," I said, motioning to the pile. "Oh, yeah, it's been a great quarter. But with the upcoming expansions, I expect to see some massive improvements. Come on, let's catch up." With that, Roz took my hand and led me to an elevator. She pushed a button and we went down. Turns out the place was way bigger than I thought. Underneath the warehouse were greenhouses for pot, crates full of guns and tables of people counting stacks of $100 bills. She even had a private jet down here. During our leisurely stroll down Crime Lane, Roz told me all about how she ended up here, selling pot to pay for college, which became a lucrative business. She hired some people to help, and the operation grew to selling illegal imports, from Kinder eggs to assault rifles. The money she earned helped pay for high-tech equipment to set up other branches of her business all around the world. Of course, plenty of gangs and mafias were against her taking over, but they were either taken down or forced to join. In just over a decade, Roz became the criminal mastermind of the world. She even had enough power to influence government policies and could even control the elections. She had become the shadow government, ruling the world behind the curtain. So, after cementing my authority, I decided I should use my newfound power for good. And because of that, the world is a safer place. Crime is dropping every year, Mike. Sure, some crazy guy starts murdering people every once in a while. We can't control that. But drug trafficking, armed robberies, even political corruption? That we can control. Wow, Roz. I'll admit your means are unorthodox, but you've definitely made the world a better place. Thank you, Mike, she said, wrapping her arms around my neck. You know, I always regretted losing touch with you. I know we had to go our separate ways, but I always wanted to reconnect with you. That's why I came back, why I put you on the list. I wanted to see you again and catch up. Maybe grab a bite to eat, like the good old days. I stared into her eyes for what seemed like eternity. And I felt the same way I did in high school all over again. Just me and her, nothing else. I missed this feeling. I missed Roz. I'd like that, I said finally. Oh, I almost forgot, she said. I've got another surprise for you. She ushered me over to the other side of the room. All I could think about was how little she had changed. She was still that spunky girl, carving her own path to save the world. Sure, she did it through organized crime, but at least it was organized. She was still that same kind-hearted girl I fell in love with all those years ago. She led me to a dimly lit room at the far end of the basement level. Inside, bound and gagged, were 3 men. They looked terrified, but Roz was practically beaming with pride. So, what do you think? Roz? Who are these people? Oh, these are the no-good dirty thugs who held you at gunpoint at the bank. I had my men track them down and bring them here to educate them. With that, Roz whipped out a handgun and loaded a clip. She pointed it at the one on the left and slowly drifted it across all 3 of them. Now, she said, which one of you little bitty scumbags put a gun to my Mikey's head? Okay, maybe she wasn't the exact same kind-hearted girl I fell in love with. Okay, so legitimately all I can say about this is that this sounds like it could be made into an over-the-top comedy anime, like I'm dating a criminal mob boss or something like that. And I just love it. I have no other words. I just love it. But for now, dear listeners, we must unfortunately bid you farewell once again. Thank you all so much for tuning into the Fiction Room. If you enjoyed today's stories, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. It would very much help us. And wherever you are in the world right now, be safe, be well, and we'll see all of you next time.